Have you ever felt like no matter how much you give, it's never enough? Like you're stuck in a life ruled by others' opinions, obligations, and expectations? Today, we expose the hidden cost of people pleasing and why Machiavelli would call it a foolish game. This is not about selfishness. It's about liberation. It's about taking back control of your life. Let me ask you something. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thought in your head? Is it about your goals, your vision, your next strategic move? Or is it about them? What will they think if I say this? How will they react if I do that? Will they approve? This is the silent disease that ruins most lives. People pleasing. It sounds innocent, even virtuous. But Machiavelli would see it for what it truly is, a hidden form of slavery. Because when your compass points to the opinions of others, you are no longer the master of your life. You've become a puppet. And the strings, they're made of social approval, fear of rejection, and the obsession to fit in. Now imagine this. A man walks into a room, constantly scanning faces, wondering if he's liked, accepted, validated. He adjusts his behavior based on the temperature of the room. He speaks not from conviction, but from calculation, not Machiavellian calculation, but cowardly compromise. He becomes soft, shapeless, a mirror reflecting what others want, never daring to cast a shadow of his own. This man thinks he's being kind, that he's avoiding conflict, that he's doing the right thing, but in reality, he's giving away his throne, piece by piece, to anyone who demands it with a frown, a scoff, or a passive-aggressive sigh. Now pause. Do you see how easy it is to fall into this trap? Society rewards the agreeable. Workplaces promote the team player. Families pressure you to stay silent for peace. Friends get offended when you prioritize yourself. And social media, it's a never-ending performance where the currency is likes, comments, and approval. But Machiavelli wouldn't buy into this. He would call it what it is, weakness disguised as virtue. Because a person who lives to please others is predictable, and predictability is vulnerability. A predictable person can be manipulated. They can be guilted, shamed, praised into submission. They're not a player in the game of power, they're a piece. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must know when to be good and when to be ruthless, that he must be feared more than loved if he is to maintain power, not because love is useless, but because love is fragile, subject to change, to betrayal, to disloyalty. But fear creates boundaries that admiration cannot, and more importantly, self-respect creates both. A ruler who begs to be liked is not respected. He's tolerated, used, discarded when convenient. The same is true in everyday life. The more you sacrifice your own needs for the comfort of others, the more they demand from you. It never ends. You become the nice guy, the easygoing girl, the one who never says no. And the price? You lose your edge, your dignity, your fire. Here's the Machiavellian truth they won't tell you. The world does not reward sacrifice. It rewards strength, and people can sense when you're living for their opinion. They can smell the fear. And what do people do when they sense fear? They push further, they take more. They see your kindness not as nobility, but as an opportunity to control, to extract, to bend you to their will. Now consider the opposite. A man who lives for himself. He is centered, rooted, unmoved by applause, untouched by insults. He does not ask, "What do they think of me?" He asks, "What do I want, and what must I do to get it?" He is not cruel, but he is clear. He has boundaries that don't require explanation. And when he enters a room, he does not adjust to its energy. He defines it. People do not question him. They observe, they respond, they follow. Why? Because power gravitates to those who do not chase approval. Power respects those who command their space instead of asking for permission to exist in it. And this is the essence of what Machiavelli understood. That to live for others is to become a prisoner. Your decisions, your values, your time, they're no longer yours. They're leased out to the desires of the crowd. And what is the crowd? Fickle, emotional, easily swayed. They will love you today and crucify you tomorrow, depending on the weather. To base your life on their opinion is to build your empire on quicksand, because the people pleaser is always waiting. Waiting to be accepted, waiting to be invited, waiting to be told he's enough. But the Machiavellian mind doesn't wait, it takes, it moves, it leads. Even if that means walking alone. There is one truth that separates the powerful from the powerless, the rulers from the ruled, the respected from the forgotten. It's not talent, it's not charm, it's not even intelligence. It is priority, the ability to place your own goals, your own vision, your own survival above all else. Not as an act of cruelty, but as an act of strategy. Machiavelli did not write for the moral man. He wrote for the man who wanted to win. And to win in this world, you must learn to be your own greatest investment. Not your family, not your friends, not the crowd, you. Because if you do not prioritize yourself, someone else will decide your priorities for you. And here's the dangerous part, they won't do it with violence. They'll do it with expectations, with guilt, with compliments designed to keep you small. They'll say, you're so reliable, you're always there for everyone, you're such a good person, and while you're busy being useful, helpful, available. They rise, they grow, they lead. Meanwhile you, the loyal one, the humble one, get left behind, burned out, forgotten, sacrificed in the name of being good. Machiavelli would never fall for this illusion. He believed a ruler must appear compassionate, not be compassionate, unless it served his purpose, not because he was heartless, but because he understood how power operates in the real world. Power doesn't serve the selfless. Power rewards those who know how to serve themselves first. Now think about this. The lion does not apologize for eating. The eagle does not explain why it flies alone. Yet humans, so desperate for approval, keep shrinking themselves to fit into cages built by others. They keep asking, is this okay? They keep waiting for permission. They keep asking for validation before they act. And while they ask, others act, others take, others lead. This is the disease of self-neglect disguised as nobility. And it is the fastest way to live a life of quiet resentment. You begin to feel it, that itch beneath the surface, that silent voice whispering, there has to be more than this. Because there is, but it starts with one brutal truth. You owe yourself everything. Your time, your energy, your loyalty, your strategy. That doesn't mean you hurt others, but it means you stop betraying yourself to protect others' comfort. It means you stop dimming your ambition so someone else can feel tall. It means you stop asking for permission to take what you were born to claim. Machiavelli warned that if a ruler is too generous, he will lose his state, too kind, and he will lose his grip, too honest, and he will be destroyed by the dishonest. So tell me, how do you think this applies to your own life? How many times have you said yes when you meant no? How often have you silenced your voice to avoid conflict? How many dreams have you put on hold because someone else needed you to play small? Every time you do this, you are handing away power, one decision at a time, one favor at a time, one excuse at a time. Power doesn't require you to be a tyrant, but it does require you to be centered. To build a life where your energy is not scattered in 20 directions, where your days are not hijacked by other people's emergencies, where your value does not come from how useful you are to others, but how aligned you are with your mission. And here's what they won't tell you when you live like this. When you prioritize yourself, people will call you selfish, but that's because your independence threatens their control. It reminds them that they've built their lives around approval, not purpose. It confronts them with their own neglect of self, but you choose a different path, a path where your calendar reflects your ambition, where your mind is clear because you no longer live in service of every demand, where you no longer dilute your decisions just to avoid being misunderstood. Machiavelli would nod in approval because he knew a ruler who tries to please everyone ends up pleasing no one, least of all himself. The world does not adjust to the man who waits. It bends reluctantly to the one who moves with intention, who builds without apology, who acts with purpose, who prioritizes self not out of arrogance, but out of awareness. There is a hidden kind of strength in this world. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it doesn't beg for applause. In fact, most people will never understand it because it's quiet, it's internal, It's the strength of a person who simply does not care what you think, not out of pride, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. Clarity that public opinion is nothing more than noise. It changes by the hour. It's built on emotion, gossip, fear, and imitation. And Machiavelli, centuries ago, understood that if you want to lead, if you want to win, you must be untouchable by this noise. You must become immune to the moods of the crowd. Now pause for a second and think about how most people live. Every decision, every post, every move they make is filtered through one haunting question. What will people think of me? And this question, this one simple question, it robs them of their potential. It ties a leash around their necks. They don't act from power, they act from fear. They don't speak with honesty, they speak with hesitation. They don't pursue their true path, they pursue acceptance. Machiavelli would call this a dangerous way to live, because the crowd is never satisfied. One moment they love you, the next they despise you. Today you're a hero, tomorrow you're forgotten, or worse, hated for the same thing they once praised. So what kind of life are you living if it's built on the shifting ground of public approval? The answer is simple. You're not living, you're performing, and performance is exhausting. It steals your energy, it steals your time. It turns you into a character in someone else's story instead of the author of your own. Machiavelli knew that to build real influence, you must build from the inside out, not from applause, not from flattery, but from personal mastery. And personal mastery requires detachment. Not emotional detachment from everything, but strategic detachment from what doesn't matter. And public opinion, it does not matter, not to your mission, not to your values, not to your future. Let me ask you, how many times have you silenced your own instincts just to blend in? How many times have you delayed action because you were afraid of how it might look? How many dreams have you watched fade because they didn't fit into someone else's idea of who you should be? This is how people become invisible, not because they have nothing to say, but because they're too afraid to say it. Machiavelli would tell you, the most dangerous person is the one who has nothing to prove, the one who is centered in himself, who doesn't react to every opinion, who doesn't seek constant approval or agreement. Because that person is free, and freedom terrifies the masses, because when you are no longer controlled by what people think, you become unpredictable, you become powerful, you become someone who cannot be manipulated. Think about it. When they know you care about your image, they can blackmail you with it. They can threaten your reputation, your perception, your status, and you will obey, just to protect the image they control. But when you no longer chase validation, when your sense of self is no longer tied to applause or criticism, suddenly they lose all leverage. They can insult you, nothing changes. They can praise you, nothing changes. You stay on course, you stay in motion, you stay aligned with something deeper than approval, your own code. Machiavelli believed that leaders must be feared more than loved if they are to hold power. But before you can ever be feared, before you can ever be respected, you must stop needing to be liked. Not because being liked is wrong, but because needing it is weakness. There's a reason the crowd follows those who don't follow them back. There's a reason people trust those who are unaffected by gossip, noise, and drama. It's because they sense something rare, a calm, a focus, a power that doesn't bend in the wind. And that's what detachment gives you. Not emptiness, not coldness, but strength. Strategic, silent, unshakable strength. You become the eye of the storm. You walk through chaos with unbothered precision. You make decisions without waiting for anyone to clap. You walk alone without shrinking. You stand in a room full of opinions and remain untouched. Not because you don't hear them, but because they no longer decide who you are. Respect is not something you ask for. It's not something you beg for. And it's definitely not something you earn by pleasing everyone. Respect is a natural byproduct of something deeper, something colder, something far more dangerous: self-mastery. Machiavelli didn't talk about self-love, self-care, or emotional healing. He wasn't writing for people who wanted comfort. He was writing for those who wanted power. And in his world, there was one constant law: no man can rule others until he rules himself. Self-mastery is not about perfection. It's about discipline. It's about command. It's about being able to look in the mirror and know exactly who you are, what you stand for, what you're building, and what you will never tolerate. Because here's what no one tells you: you don't gain respect by being loud. You don't gain it by being everywhere, doing everything, constantly explaining yourself. You gain it the moment you become a person of weight, a person who moves with intention, a person who doesn't react, doesn't chase, doesn't flinch. And the only way to become that kind of person is through self-mastery, not by controlling the world, but by mastering the only world that actually matters, your inner one. Most people walk around like leaves in the wind, blown by emotions, blown by validation, blown by moods, trends, gossip, flattery, fear. One minute they're confident, the next, one insult breaks them. One rejection derails their entire momentum. Machiavelli would see this as weakness. He would tell you, if your mind is ruled by others, so is your fate. If you are reactive, you are predictable. If you are predictable, you are controllable. And if you are controllable, you are nothing but a tool in someone else's strategy. But the man who is anchored, the man who responds instead of reacts, the man who knows his limits, his code, his direction, that man is a problem. You can't shake him, you can't shame him, you can't use him as a pawn because he doesn't need your game. Self-mastery is the weapon no one sees. It's not visible on your body, it doesn't wear a crown or demand applause. But it radiates in every action, in how you speak, in what you tolerate, in what you walk away from without explaining yourself. The world respects boundaries. It tests them constantly, but it respects them. And when people realize your boundaries are not up for debate, they respond with a strange mix of curiosity and fear. They don't always like you, but they respect you. And here's the secret: that's enough. Because respect is more stable than love, more reliable than admiration, more permanent than popularity. Respect anchors influence. It turns your silence into pressure, your presence into authority, your words into law. But you don't get there by mimicking confidence. You don't get there by dressing the part or saying the right words. You get there by doing the work behind closed doors, sharpening your mind, controlling your impulses, building your body, taming your ego, cleaning up the internal chaos that keeps you distracted, reactive, and weak. Machiavelli knew that a leader's greatest enemy wasn't the enemy outside. It was the one within. The undisciplined self, the anxious self, the lazy self, the part of you that wants comfort instead of growth, peace instead of confrontation, approval instead of alignment. And the truth is, no one can respect you more than you respect yourself. If you keep breaking your word to yourself, if you keep saying yes when you mean no, if you keep tolerating things that betray your values, you're silently telling the world, I am not to be taken seriously. But when you say less and do more, when you act with consistency instead of emotion, when you no longer explain your standards, but live by them with absolute clarity, you change how the world responds to you. You stop being a background character, you become a force. People sense your gravity, they know you can walk away, they know your time is not freely given, your energy is not scattered, your attention is earned. And that's when the tone shifts. That's when they lean in instead of brush you off. That's when they hesitate before testing you. That's when they stop underestimating you. Not because you told them to, but because you made it impossible for them not to. You were not born to be a mirror for the world. You were not made to fit into molds built by people who don't even know who they are. You were not designed to live on the edge of approval, waiting, hoping, adjusting, apologizing. Machiavelli understood something most never will, that the man who lives for others dies forgotten. But the man who lives for himself, for his values, his mission, his truth leaves a mark that even time hesitates to erase. Because when you stop people-pleasing, you become unpredictable. When you prioritize yourself, you become powerful. When you detach from opinion, you become immovable. And when you master yourself, you command respect without saying a word. So stop looking outward, start building inward. Stop living by their standards, start living by your own law. Live for yourself, not for others, not out of arrogance, but out of strength, out of awareness. Out of the Machiavellian truth that your life was never meant to be lived on anyone else's terms,